Hey everyone, today I'm going to put some new handle scales on this knife. Before we get into that, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Thank you. Now, onto the knife. This is one of those cheap Pakistani made fixed blades. It had some really cheap plastic handle scales and they ended up coming off, so I'm going to put some nicer handle scales on this knife. I have some black G10 here that I'll be making my handle scales from. First thing I'm going to do is tape up the blade because this is a sharp blade, so I'm going to tape it up to cover up the sharp edge. I'm also going to wear some gloves just for safety. First thing I'm going to do is drill these pin holes just a little bit bigger. These holes are 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to drill them to 3/16 of an inch. I've got the holes drilled, and I chamfered the holes as well, meaning I added a tiny little bevel to be sure that there's no burrs. And now it's time to clean up this tank, because as you can see, it's pretty dirty, so I'm just going to wire wheel it real quick.
Don't be afraid. Come with me. Together we will fight.
The tang is now clean, and I'm going to rough up the surface of the tang real quick with some rough grit sandpaper. I will now trace the shape of the tang onto the scales, and then I will cut the scales out on my scroll saw. Pins are cut, and I beveled the ends on the disc sander, and now it's time to drill the handle scales for the pins. The scales are now roughed up on one side, so I'm just going to clean the tang real quick, make sure that the back of these scales are clean, and then it'll be time to attach the scales. These scales are now epoxied onto the tang, so I will let this sit for a while, and then I will shape the scales. You'll notice I put some leather spacers between the C-clamps and the scales. That's so the clamps don't mark up the G10. That leather might end up getting epoxy to the scales, but it's not a big deal. I just don't want deep gouges that I'm going to have to sand out. The scales are now epoxied on, so I will now begin the shaping of the scales. The scales are now done. I went with a 600 grit polish on these scales. I could have went with a finer polish and really made these scales glossy, but I like the more matte black look. I also rounded the spine, and I do plan on eventually making a sheath for this knife, but that's going to be a while from now. I really like the way that these scales came out. The only regret I have is I wish I would have used a tube rivet for the bottom pin. That way I would have had a way to attach a lanyard to this knife. However, being that this is more or less a utility knife for me, that doesn't bother me. So that's pretty much it. If you would like to have some scales made for a knife or anything else done that I offer on my website, you can find out how to contact me at studentofwarcustoms.com. Link will be in the description. The music in this video was made by my friend Lo Belver. The link to the songs will also be in the description, along with the link to his channel. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you next video.